So today what we will do is we continue from where we left off. So we take a look at the seventh element, that is feeling. So we see that when we speak about the feeling, it is the appearance of anything pleasant, disagreeable or indifferent. Okay, so for example, we know that when we encounter a particular object, there are different ways how we may perceive it, or there are different ways the object can have an effect on us. It can produce pleasant feelings within us. It can make us unpleasant or disagreeable. Or in other words, it may not produce anything at all. It is there as it is, and we may have a feeling of indifference towards it. So we see that the contact what we spoke about, that is the object side of the experience, whereas the feeling becomes the subject or the subjective side of experience. Because we see that when an object is there, when you touch it, if it is square, it will be square for everybody. But how it is perceived by us, what feelings or what emotions it evokes in us will be different for each and everyone. Okay, for example, if you take the picture of a cartoon, for some it may evoke happy memories of childhood, etc. Others it may be, this is childish, we are not supposed to look at, it doesn't make any sense to look at it now. So therefore the cartoon remains as it is, you view it as it is, all of us will view it in the same way, but what it evokes in us is different. Now we see that the next important element which comes is craving. So this is the eighth element, and we see that craving is generally seen as a threefold part. So you have the desire craving, apprehension craving, as well as existential craving. So we have dealt a bit with craving, right? So what so far have we understood about craving? Okay, in the sense? No, in the sense, what did we say? Craving leads to suffering. Anything else we did when it came to craving? Yes? Okay. Leads to unsatisfaction, which ultimately leads to disappointment. So anything else did we come across when we were looking at craving? Okay, so first and foremost we see that when we look at craving, we need to take a look at these three forms. First is the desire craving. That means kind of wishing happiness, abundance, etc. So basically whatever desire we have, craving for something more. Then you have a kind of an apprehension craving where you wish to avoid misery, and then finally you also have the existential craving. And in the existential craving, it is closely attached to our body and personality. So for example, last time we saw, when we looked at the suffering, so desire craving can refer to anything that has to do with our physical plus our senses. When it comes to apprehension, ultimately all want to avoid anything that is unfortunate or misery. And existential craving is something to do with our appearance or with basically the externals, appearance, etc. And therefore we see that as the eighth component of this cycle of dependent origination, we see that craving, as we see, originates from the feeling which is said to be the mature fruit of the previous life. Okay, so when we look at attachment or clinging, we'll take a look at an example where again we'll be explaining this. Okay, so it basically comes as a result of the maturation of your effects of your previous life. So the ninth element, okay, which comes in this cycle is that of attachment. And once again you will see how all these in a way are linked to one another. So therefore in Buddhism we see that attachment or clinging, so it refers to attachment or clinging to various things, ideas as well as practices. And there are basically 4 types of attachment. Now, which are these 4 types? First is appropriation by desire. So, in other words, this refers to craving or attachment towards sensory pleasures experiences as well as desire for life. Okay, sometimes when we look at objects, we may be fixated on a particular shape of the object or on a particular melody. Okay, and in this way we may have a craving and we may constantly seek them because they arise pleasure in us. Similarly, when it comes to desire for life, we may see that an individual may have a desire to live as long as possible, okay, fearing death, and he may go to any extent in order to prolong his life. Okay, in one of the X-Men series, if you have watched, you have that man who survives the atomic bomb. You have seen the Japanese man, right? And we see that he somehow has that craving within him in order to remain. That is why he develops that machine in order to get the regeneration powers from Wolverine. Okay, so sometimes that can happen. When this desire is there to live long, when that fear of death is there, we see that people can go to any extent, any number of surgeries, etc. Second kind of attachment is appropriation by false views. So in other words, this basically refers to a kind of an clinging to incorrect or harmful beliefs, ideas, etc. So we see that some people may hold the belief that there are no moral consequences. And this may lead to doing whatever he or she wishes without concerning the ethical implications of it. We also have very clear example when we look at fundamentalists. Now, who is a fundamentalist? When a person is so much fixated on something that the person is not willing to change. Okay? So when again we go to the scripture, who would we consider as the fundamentalists? The scribes, Pharisees. Why? Because we see that their ideas were a bit outdated in that way, but still they cling on to that without changing according to the time. So for example, if suppose somebody tells you all must not use mobile because in our times we never used. Okay? So well, things have changed, but you cannot hold on to those views earlier. Okay? Similarly, as we said last time about superstition or about the whole demonic possession, how disease was considered something to do with the spirits, but now science has proved that it is otherwise. So second one is appropriation by or clinging to false or harmful beliefs. Third one is appropriation by perception of self. This involves belief in unchanging self or soul. So therefore, here we see that the person may feel that he himself is important, or we see that the person may feel that whatever he has is permanent. So clinging on to things about oneself, about one's identity. So here we see that this can lead to egoism, and it can also lead to a sense of separation from others. Why? Because I know best, and therefore if I interact or mingle with others, I may lose my value, etc. Okay, so I is predominant here. And we see that next you have appropriation by false ethics. So this refers to attachment to ineffective ethical systems. in a way we see that this one is closely related to the second one. So in this way we see that person may hold on to outdated beliefs, practices. Or sometimes we see that because it worked last year, if we should try it this year. Okay, so certain things like this when we have, which are not based on reason, then we see that it tends to be some kind of attachment, because we are so much attached to that, we are not ready to change our views. If this is clear, we can move to the 10th one, which is becoming. So this we see that is a direct kind of a influence of attachment and craving. So to put it in simple words, whatever we are attached to or whatever we in a way crave for and practice, it slowly becomes part and parcel of us. So let's take for example, if a person, so let's take the craving here. There is this individual who craves for a luxurious life, okay, filled with material comforts. So therefore, what would be the attachment here? Suppose if you crave for a luxurious, wealthy lifestyle, what would be your attachment to? To material comforts, okay? So material things, gadgets, wealth. Now we see that what is the effect of this? Effect or the effect of this would be that it leads to tendencies like spending lavishly, or making decisions that lead to wealth or riches. Now we see that when it comes to these tendencies, nobody is telling the person that okay, if you want a luxurious lifestyle, you must spend more or you must buy more. It naturally comes, okay? So this is the effect of the attachment and the craving, the outward expression of spending more, making decisions, and whole orientation on money. So whatever the person does will be focused only on acquiring wealth. And as a result, we see that it leads to a lifestyle focused on material gain. Now, we see that when we look at becoming, or as it is called bhava, in this stage we see that it is the past actions, okay, and attachments influence the future. So as last time we said, the seeds which you have sown in the past take effect later on. Now it is said that there is also a kind of a germinative action. So what do we understand by germination? Seed sprouts, shoots come up, we say germination. Same thing happens over here. Now all your past actions, okay, all the attachments, cravings, etc., in a way initiates this process of becoming. And we see that this influences future existence and creates the conditions for new life. So for example, we see that if there is a person who always engages in acts of kindness, such as volunteering, helping the sick, helping the poor, etc., we see that this is the germinative action, the acts of kindness. Okay? Now this will create conditions for a favorable rebirth. Okay, and in this way we see that the individual in the next life will be born in conditions where the person can continue the good that is being done. Similarly, if we see that if a person engages in selfish behavior, deceit, theft, fraud, etc., these negative actions in a way will create the conditions for unfavorable birth. So in the rebirth, when the person is born, the individual will be born in difficult circumstances. So this is basically kind of a cause and effect. Whatever seeds are sown, thus the fruit of that. So then we come to the 11th one, and here we see that rebirth basically refers to a state of the matured 5 aggregates. So now let's try to explain this with an example. So if the person is attached to a very kind or compassionate life, or in simple words, if the person is kind-hearted, affectionate, etc., then we see that this attachment of kindness, of compassion will lead towards an altruistic behavior. The person becomes other-centered, and therefore the germination here, or the germinative state, would be these actions which will influence the rebirth. Now we see that upon the death, the seeds or all these past kind of deeds what have been done, they begin to take effect, and as a result of it, we see that the 5 aggregates and these karmic forces interact in order to influence the rebirth of the person. So in this way we see that if the person has been kind, compassionate, the child or the baby that is born, the newborn, is born into a loving, compassionate family, then we see that it is also been able to have a positive atmosphere at rebirth. Okay, so basically in short we see that the actions that we do have an effect towards the rebirth. And the last one we see that is old age and death. So at death we see that this refers to the inevitable stage of life, because it is the ultimate end of life. So for example, if we take a teacher, so in her lifetime we see that she uses all of the 5 aggregates and goes about doing her actions. Okay, so in the childhood she would probably learn, okay, have various experiences. Then in the adulthood we see that maturation happens, person matures, experiences also increase, and here we see that the person experiences the full spectrum of life pleasures, whether positive or negative. And at this stage we see that person also develops the career, and whatever happens here, the seeds are being sown. Then the person enters old age. Okay, so the career, this would be the middle age. So in the old age we see that slowly there is physical plus mental deterioration. So we see that there may be pain, discomfort, person finds it difficult to stand, etc. Similarly, the person may not remember things, may not remember names, etc. So your physical and mental deterioration. And finally we see that at death the person may fall ill, and as a result of it all so life ceases. And therefore, according to the cycle of dependent origination, this death now leads to a rebirth which depends on the karma, which depends on the attachments, cravings, etc. Okay, so these interact with the 5 aggregates and then lead to the rebirth of the person. And in this way we see that death doesn't become the end of the life, but in a way we see that it is a transition. So death is not an end but transition. So life in the body ceases, but death becomes a transition to a new life. Okay, now let's take a look at the let's take a look at the 4 Brahmaviharas, or in other words, these are a kind of virtuous as well as noble states of mind which are central to Buddhist teaching. So here we see that in this we first need to look at metta, which is loving kindness. So this basically refers to wishing the welfare and happiness of all living beings. So it is a set of 4 virtues which we have, that is metta, karuna, mudita and upeka. Okay, and these in a way are central to Buddhist meditation as well as Buddhist ethics. Basically these are states of mind. So when we look at metta, we see that it is a wish for welfare and happiness, and over here we see that it is boundless, selfless love. Okay, and can we have examples of this? We see love of a mother who goes beyond, okay, in order to care for the child, care for the family. Okay, and also if you take more spiritual one, you can see the sun rays, right? Sun provides light to everyone, good, bad, okay? It rains on everybody, whether the person is good, bad, etc. Okay, so this basically refers to an unconditional love for all living beings. Next we take a look at karuna. Karuna is compassion, and basically the desire is to end the suffering for others. Okay, because we see that sometimes when you look at the suffering of others, you are touched by it, it has an effect of you, and all you want to do is pray that the person's suffering ends. So for example, we have certain individuals that tend to be soft-hearted, right? Who are filled with compassion, and we see that they try to go out of their way to help others. A kind of good Samaritan. Okay, the good Samaritan who we would refer to in the scriptures. Then we have sympathetic joy, rejoicing in the success and the happiness of others. So this is the opposite of jealousy, opposite of envy, pride, etc. You feel happy for the happiness and joys and success of others. Okay, so for example, when others get something good, you don't feel jealous, why I did not get that even though I deserved it, but you become happy for that person and also join in his celebration. And the last one which we shall look is upeka, which is mental balance and impartiality. So that means you look at a situation with an unbiased mind, not holding on to any prejudices, not holding on to any past beliefs. So for example, when you are praised or when you are criticized, you respond in the same calm attitude. Not that you become overjoyed when you are praised and become completely down and depressed when you are criticized. But here, maintain a calm, maintain a steady mind in respect to any situation. Okay, so next time we'll take a look at the concept of God and also the schools in Buddhism.